What? My opinion? I'm not interested in politics. Everybody lies, especially Western propaganda. I prefer something for entertainment and self-development.
Russian scientists made stunning conclusions that the Earth is flat because if it was round, you would fall down and die.
Сука, блядь, I knew it. Our scientists are so good.
Hello, hello, and welcome everyone to Overtime. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and with me today is Commander Lance McMillan and Operator Starsky. Gentlemen, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Doing fine.
Well, thank you all for joining us. And for those of you who are new here, we are streaming on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook simultaneously, and we can take comments from any of those medium. If you're on Twitter, you can @InTimeShow or just hashtag InTimeShow with your comment, and we will get those. So why don't we start with Lieutenant Starsky, if you don't mind letting us know what's been going on this last week in Ukraine.
Quite a lot of news. First of all, today, 𝐒𝐤𝐜𝐿𝐴 𝐬𝐿𝐴, mayor of Kiev, confirmed that we have received anti-air measures that will protect the capital city. I don't know about the rest of the cities, but as far as I know, a bunch of our major cities were meant to be equipped with those. Also, we don't know much about specifically what kind of anti-air and anti-missile equipment was brought to Kiev. Probably we will find out soon. I hope not. And we also have confirmation that our troops have destroyed or intercepted around 300 Iranian Shahed drones, or those mopeds. And intensity of using those drones has decreased, which is great. And speaking of drones, today our Minister Kuleba talked to his Iranian counterpart. He had a phone call, and he demanded Iran to stop supplying Russia with those drones. As we know, Iran asked to participate in this investigation because it's kind of funny. We have the saying, when you participate in an investigation, it's very important not to find your own traces. It reminds me, actually, you remember that investigation of shooting down MH17 in 2014?
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, it's the same thing. When Russians participated, they even wanted to get access to the black box of the destroyed MH17. That's around that period they produced plenty of photoshops, fakes, new versions. I still remember those, and I mean, it's a tragedy. It's bad to laugh when we speak about such serious things, but Su-25 flying at the Echelon 300 and destroying Boeing, which, Su-25 is not even a fighter, it's an attack aircraft. But anyways, I heard that they even edited Russian Wikipedia because Su-25 cannot fly that high, so they changed the some numbers in Wikipedia. But anyways, so we also have official information from our military intelligence regarding the dam in Kherson. We know for sure that it was mined, but our military intelligence also provided the information that probably Russia doesn't have enough explosives to destroy this dam completely.
Oh, wow.
So probably they have reason to say this information, to make it public.
Well, that's good news. I've been worried about that dam. That would have been, I think, what was it they said? 15 feet, so 5 meters, 15 feet wall of water if that thing breaks, and it would help cover Russia's. How did they frame that, Commander? Their glorious, brave retreat of their. I mean, it would help cover that, and it would keep the Ukrainians off of them for a little bit. There's no way they're not going to.
Their victorious retreat being followed by the terrified Ukrainian army or something.
Pursued by the terrified Ukrainian army. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
A glorious negative offense.
Yeah. We're retreating in a different direction.
Well, they're advancing. They're just advancing backwards. It's technical. I don't understand any of this military jargon. I'm sure they're doing fine. All right. So that's good news. Anything else?
Yes, according to Speaker of our Ministry of Defense, Russians probably will not retreat much from Kherson. So what they were trying to show all this time, and basically it's PsyOps, that they were retreating from Kherson in big numbers and evacuating people and stuff. First of all, they sabotaged, let's call it this way, the infrastructure in the way so local population literally had no water, nor electricity, and no services. So they were told that Ukrainian army is destroying all the infrastructure, and they were forced basically to agree to get deported to the territory of Russia. Again, it's a deportation of local population, which is a war crime according to
voluntary evacuation.
Exactly. Then what they do is, again, because that territory on the right bank of Ukraine that is controlled by Russians is literally pumped up with their forces, and we were talking about it for quite a while. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to pretend that Russia is, terrified. Their propagandists also talked about it on a TV a lot, and we know that nothing happens on Russian TV unexpectedly. Okay, that's why, again, you got to know how to read Russian propaganda. And basically what we expect is that Russians will try to lure Ukrainians into a trap. But we already know that. And also, according to the information from our general staff, Ukrainian troops in Luhansk region move deeper into Russia-controlled territories with the speed of approximately between 1 and 3 kilometers per day, which is not that fast, but still not bad, considering the fact that we're trying to save as much lives as we can.
Sure. So I have a question for you. The whole thing that they've been going on about the dirty bomb, we know it's BS. My question is, why are they making that statement right now? What is the anticipated opposite action that's likely to occur based off of that?
There are a couple of versions. First of all, like one of the most anticipated ones, but not confirmed, that they do that in order to justify using tactical nuclear weapons. But according to the international intelligence agencies, like in Pentagon, for example, from those sources, we know that they don't show any signs of preparation for using those. And of course, nuclear weapons, even speaking of tactical nuclear weapons, it's not like a bullet. It's not that easy to hide those. Another version is, again, they did quite a research showing some pictures. Some of those were made like 10 years ago in Slovakia, probably. And probably this way they, again, try to find some justification for their invasion. We already heard a lot of those, starting from American labs on the territory of Ukraine, and those genetically modified birds, viruses carried by bats and mosquitoes, deadly viruses targeting specifically Russian population. Again, in my opinion, alcoholism is not delivered by viruses. It's like low culture produces that.
Genetically coded.
Yeah.
Yes, and now it's a dirty bomb. My proposition is to use dirty bomb as a nickname for Shoigu. I think it fits him perfectly.
That's good. Because one of the things I was wondering is, we know there's that nuclear plant just up the river from the dam. And we know they've been excluding the engineers who run the plant from going in and working on it, which to my mind is potentially setting up a Chernobyl-ish kind of situation if it hasn't been properly shut down. If that happens, then there's this venting of radiation and such. Are they simply trying to mask that event, which is caused by their own actions, and trying to say, oh, no, this was some horrible deliberate action by the Ukrainians? That was, to my thinking, one of the actions that might be going on.
Absolutely agree on that. They can say that in case they screw up big time with that and something explodes, they can always blame Ukraine. They can say that it was a HIMARS strike, for example, or some explosive device brought by genetically modified duck, or something like that.
The rabbit attack ducks. Ooh, I love it. Oh boy.
Well, we shouldn't laugh. I do think.
I know.
I do think. Well, no, I think that's Putin's reserve. The entire reserve is going to be mallards. It's one of those things. I feel bad for the ducks. If you're a mallard facing a Ukrainian with U.S. artillery, I kind of feel bad for them. But okay. Anyways, so I think I cut you off, Commander. Was there anything else that you? No. Okay.
Nope.
So let's see. We also had let me try to get these in order here. So since we're talking about Kherson, We do have reports now. First of all, there was a military HQ that was abandoned, and they were burning records, but it looks like they hadn't burned all of them. You pointed out, and this is important to note, that may also just be for show. That may also be how rapidly they abandon it. So it's very difficult to tell. But those records do show it's actual documented evidence of picking up civilians, torturing them, holding them in the basement of the HQ. And their general state of mind in regards to, and records going all the way back to July, where they were awaiting their weapons, and already soldiers were talking about not wanting to fight because they didn't have the proper equipment. What is the assessment on taking that area, Kherson, which is obviously very important, and I think once that's taken would put Crimea in range of all the way to the back of Crimea in range of the HIMARS. Is that correct?
Yes. So such cities as Sevastopol, for example, they will be within the reach. I hope I'm not wrong with that. Which is very important because Sevastopol is their main naval base, their airfields and things like that. One thing that I thought about was, again, it not like it will definitely happen, but because we're talking about Russians, it may. Is what if at some point Ukrainian army will be able to capture like an actual nuclear weapon that is located in Crimea? It's there's a lot of things to consider. But speaking seriously, so the advance in that area continues. We still have some informational blackout there in the area. One thing I can tell you for sure is that Russians expected that Ukrainian army will use this rapid, violent advance in Kherson, and that's why they located huge amounts of their troops there, a lot of their BTGs. I think it won't happen. It will take enough time to make sure that we can liberate that area with the least amount of casualties, which is very important. Again, we cannot lose neither man nor our vehicles. To me personally, it's very painful to see our vehicles being destroyed because every vehicle is precious on the front line. So I hope that's the answer. Fortunately, cannot tell you much about it because of informational blackout.
Of course. Commander, do you have any knowledge of it? To the best of my understanding, there aren't nuclear weapons in Crimea. Now, I recall that there was some secondhand accounts. In fact, I think you had discussed it with us
I don't doubt that there were at one point, but when Sevastopol became untenable, the Russians relocated their fleet to Novorossiysk and Sochi, which is on the far side, the eastern side of the Black Sea. So it's basically been evacuated. And I can't imagine that if they moved the fleet, they left naval nuclear warheads still sitting in the port. I would imagine they would take them with them. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have nuclear warheads for like anti-ship missiles or stuff, because they still have some of their aircraft based in the air bases around Sevastopol. So there may well be, and because a nuclear weapon is what it is, even though it's specifically on a projectile, intended for shooting ships or what have you, or a nuclear depth charge or something, I would imagine, would not have too much difficulty repurposing it for use in a land target situation. So I would be cautious about saying that they've evacuated or don't have any nuclear weapons in Crimea.
Commander, did they have any nuclear warheads on their flagship that turned into a submarine?
Yeah, their new submarine. It would not surprise me. That particular missile system, I don't know what they call it. We used to call it the SSN-12. Definitely was capable of carrying nuclear weapons, and I think it had 16 such missiles on board it. My guess, given normal ratios, is 2 to 4 of them probably were nuclear. Whether they had them on board at the time it was sunk, who can say? But I think the normal outfit when you were going to deploy that ship as a ship to directly oppose NATO, you'd probably have had, I would guess, four nuclear warheads aboard.
Well, as I recall, the Moskva, once it sank, there was an immediate recovery operation that went into effect to at least get to it, and that strikes me as they were concerned about securing nuclear weapons that may have been aboard. Am I remembering that correctly?
That would make a hell of a lot of sense. I did not know that they had immediately started a recovery operation, and that's honestly just about the only thing I can imagine that would be.
Yeah, they weren't making an effort
value enough. Yeah, but of enough value to put salvage vessels at risk in a combat zone is to recover those warheads. That would be my interpretation of the situation.
All right, and we have a $20 super chat from Michael Westby. And by the way, just a reminder, all super chats today are going to the and always when we have Operator Starsky on in the future, all super chats are donated. 100% will cover the 30% that YouTube takes off the top. 100% of all super chats are donated to the charity of Lieutenant Starsky's choice. The name of that charity and the link to it is in the description. So $20, Michael Westby. Thank you very much, Michael, for your support. Operator Starsky, YPA Operator Starsky. I don't know if that's URA. I don't know. I'm a little concerned about, quote, official military info. I wouldn't put it past the Russians to feed false info to Ukrainians. Also, you and Commander McMillan on the same stream.
Don't they?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Well, Titan had asked the same question about the headquarters and what's the likelihood that that information was false. Any thought, either of you?
I can thank you. I can see any reason for Russians to literally sit there and forge those papers and reports blaming themselves.
Yeah, I agree. And if you look at the photographs of the headquarters building and the speed of the advance at that time going into that area and the panicked retreat that was going on, I think it was just, holy shit, they're coming, run. And everybody just left the building in a rush, and whatever was there is there. It's really hard to come up with a credible scenario of, oh, let's plant false information to deceive them, unless that kind of planning, if you, for example, Operation Mincemeat, which was the man who never was thing, where they in World War II, where they dumped the body off the coast of Spain and everything. the planning for that event went on for months before they actually executed the operation. And they went through all this detailed stuff to ensure that it looked very, very credible that this is what it was. It's a guy who, his plane crashed, he fell into the sea, he accidentally drifts up, and they have all this documentation on him. That takes time and effort, and nothing that I saw in the photos from that building or the information that was revealed from this particular journal suggests to me at all that this was a plant.
And also, I have to agree with you, Commander, and also, if I was a Russian propagandist or like a denier, I would suggest that Ukrainian troops brought a bunch of those like printed journals with them to blame Russians that were already prepared. Some I don't know, Ukrainian soldiers were carrying them in their backpacks, which I think probably somebody would suggest eventually.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, your troops are in the midst of an offensive operation. The last thing they want to do is have some intel weenie tagging along with this briefcase of, here's the plant journal we're going to put in. It doesn't seem credible to me. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I remember that probably in April or March, we have eliminated plenty of Russian columns and captured their documents. Mm-hmm. And among those documents, there were reports, basically, including the dates of beginning this marching into the Ukrainian territory. And I could be wrong, but I think they planned this operation to start at February 16th. Mm-hmm. So they, according to information from Russian prisoners and from those documents, they planned to attack on February 16th, and they planned to bring their troops back in 2 weeks. The shortest period of time for this operation, I think it was suggested by 𝐒𝐤𝐸𝐽, either 𝐒𝐤𝐸𝐽 or Simonyan. I don't remember exactly. Probably even Simonyan. So she said that it was gonna take 2 days, not 3. Yeah, but according to those documents that we found early in this spring, basically, it was planned to capture all of the Ukrainian major cities, mm-hmm. of course Kyiv, and install new government there, suppress protests, and stabilize the situation on the street in 2 weeks. And basically, Russian Rosguard would move in, and Rosguard includes those Kadyrovites, of course. And Russian regular troops would return home. Before that, they would have this majestic parade.
Oh, of course. Everything has to be celebrated with parades.
Of course. So, yeah, that was the plan. Probably. Something went wrong.
Yeah.
I remember that very well. We had... in fact, we had Commander Macmillan on for that. We had reached the conclusion that they were likely going to invade, so we were on standby for the entire time, and we're just waiting. And then one of our, we scour social media, and somebody picked up on social media two things. First of all the cameras along the Crimean checkpost all went out simultaneously. And second of all, there was footage on Facebook of a 7-mile-long column heading to Crimea. And we decided, we're not quite sure. We geolocated it, but we're not quite sure. So we check on Google traffic, and sure enough, there's a 7-mile-long slowdown in that area. So that's it, we're going live. So we call Macmillan, we go live, and we covered literally we were live before the first one crossed into Crimea, and we covered it from that point. But we had asked, we were with Macmillan. I don't know if you remember. This was when I was most impressed with Macmillan. Was we said, okay, how do we know what's going to happen? Whether they're going to actually try to go west of the river and go for the entire country, or just go. Except it depends on whether or not you get amphibious landing in Odessa, and 2 seconds later, amphibious landing. But we had projected 7 days, and I cannot. I could not be more glad to have been wrong about that. I think,
everybody at the time was predicting that Ukraine was going to there's no way they could stop the vaunted Russian army, the second most powerful army in the world, et cetera, et cetera.
I heard a lot of those things prior to this invasion.
Yeah.
And I would go people would go they have the second strongest army in the world and nukes. I would be like, yeah. So, and people would be like, but you are too optimistic, right? Guys, we spent 8 years learning how to fight against Russians.
Yep.
8 years. And we were fighting with all types of Russians. Their reconnaissance and sabotage groups, their smaller groups, right? Their battalion tactical groups, regular infantry, since 2014. And we learned a lot about them. So yeah, and another thing, of course, probably that was unexpected even for me. But Russians wouldn't expect such a big international support for Ukraine. That was a big surprise to us and to them. I didn't expect that, honestly, because I remember that since 2014, everybody would be like, yes, Crimea, Donbass, where is it? Everything changed. And that's when I became inspired by people around the world. Because decent people are always my biggest source of inspiration. And this time it was like the whole world who supported people who supported Ukraine.
Not everybody. Let's be honest.
Well,
the North Koreans are going to, all those great nations that everybody's inspired by all the time. And
the thing is, I cannot confirm if they support or don't support Russia, because I tried to check their forums.
There are forums in North Korea?
Yes. I tried to find some kind of North Korean websites, and I wasn't lucky enough. So I think it may be different. But
I love the photo taken by, I think it was the International Space Station, of Earth at night, and they're going over that portion.
Oh, yeah.
And you see, Japan all lit up, China lit up, Vietnam lit up, South Korea's lit up. And then there's this black hole in the middle of the photograph. Welcome to the Stone Age, dudes.
And it's a North Korean shaped hole. I mean, you can tell what it is.
No.
It's like
their electricity dampening field. That's what
yeah. Oh.
It's like when you open Google Maps.
Yes.
And you see like some country with like plenty of roads, like China with plenty of roads, then South Korea with plenty of roads, with this crazy web of those roads, and then there's North Korea with like a single highway going west to east.
Yeah, Wonsan to Pyongyang. That's it.
Wow. Oh, hold on, we've got a breaking news here, an announcement from Vladimir Putin. Today, I am happy to announce that with a great deal of effort and the deployment of the entire Russian military, we are now barely made it to the second best military in Ukraine. All right, that's Vladimir Putin. So I may have fibbed on that one a little bit. Anyways,
So he barely beat out the Syrian mercenaries. Okay, got it.
yeah. I was gonna. Well, yeah.
Kidding aside.
Yeah.
The one thing I think is interesting that doesn't seem to have gotten a lot of mention in the news or anything lately is for the past 2 months, the Russians have been slamming their heads against the Ukrainian line, trying to take the city of Bakhmut. And in one day, your guys pushed them back like 2 or 3 kilometers. It was just like, it shows the relative effectiveness of the two militaries in my mind.
Yeah, so they brought their Wagnerites to this location. There's a lot of them. We already posted 2 videos on the Facebook page of my brigade with 2 captured Wagnerites. Both were charged for homicide, and they were sent to Ukraine.
Are these the ones with tuberculosis or without tuberculosis?
Yes. One with tuberculosis, another one slightly wounded by a hand grenade, but they were doing their time for homicide, and they were sent to Ukraine. Technically transferred to another prison, right? They were burning down a lot of those gentlemen on the east, and they captured this strategic crossroad that they called a crossroad of Putin's crossroad.
Mm-hmm.
They made a lot of TikToks and videos and other propaganda crap about that. And just in 48 hours, the front line moved back like 2 kilometers. It was expected, I would say.
Yeah, the impression I get is that the reason the front has not been advancing in that sector is simply because you guys haven't been trying to advance the front in that sector. You've just been holding it defensively, and finally you got fed up with these guys.
So what we're doing, the tactic is pretty much similar to what we did in 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐿𝐴 and 𝐿𝐵𝐼𝐻, because my guys were there, and today they're in the area of Bakhmut. So basically, in 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐿𝐴 and 𝐿𝐵𝐼𝐻, the situation was harder than near Bakhmut, because there were around 9 or 10 battalion tactical groups, Russian battalion tactical groups, against a single Ukrainian battalion tactical group. That was basically my brigade. And we realized that we were not able to hold defense and defend this city successfully. So what we did was we decided to slowly move back, inflicting as many casualties to enemy as we could. According to reports of our infantry, they lost around 1,000 men in close combat in 𝐕𝐵𝐻 and 𝐶𝐕𝐿𝐴. Again, there was huge difference in artillery. So in case in other spans of the front line, we had approximately 1 Ukrainian howitzer versus 7 or 10 Russian howitzers. In the area of 𝐕𝐵𝐻 and 𝐶𝐕𝐿𝐴, there were 1 Ukrainian howitzer versus 15 Russian. So we were unable to hold that city. That's why we moved back slowly, inflicting casualties, as much casualties as we were able to. So in Bakhmut, we basically see the same situation. So every day, 7-8 attacks are being deflected by Ukrainian armed forces there. And what we do is we're trying to eliminate as much personnel as we can, because now we have, I would not call it advantage in artillery. However, the range of M777s and the range of HIMARS systems is much higher than, much bigger, right, than the range of Russian howitzers. The only thing that can beat this range and be used as counter battery measure is basically Russian Uragans. Those have the range of I think 90 kilometers,
something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. Aside of that, they don't have any type of artillery that can successfully destroy M777s and HIMARS, because they have much higher range. And in this case, we have advantage over them. So we are using our artillery to eliminate their personnel, which again wasn't widely seen previously, because previously we were only targeting their logistics, their ammunition storages, their fuel storages. Now we can basically eliminate their infantry in big numbers.
Yeah.
Especially after, considering the fact that we were delivered more than 1 million shells from our Western allies.
Yeah, for people who don't know, I think it's worth pointing out that the 777 and other NATO-based 155 artillery pieces have about a 50% range advantage over Russian D-30 and S-21 style artillery pieces, which is their most common artillery piece. So it really does give an enormous advantage to the Ukrainians to have those, because they can stay at a distance where they can't be engaged by counter battery fire, and they can still hit whatever targets needed to be hit. And the other thing that I think is important is the Ukrainians seem to have done an absolutely superb job of training forward observers and using drones to direct fires effectively onto targets. And you see Russian fires often, it lands a kilometer away and they claim it's a success. Whereas, if a Ukrainian shell lands further than about 100 meters from the intended target, it's considered a miss. So, yeah, I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I would like to ask about, there's been some chatter in the press recently about the possibility of another offensive developing out of Belarus, coming down towards Kyiv. What do you think of the possibilities of that actually materializing, or is that just posturing?
It's definitely possible. My take on that is that they will try to distract our reserves in case we are successful in the Kherson area with our counteroffensive in Kherson, probably. But from what we can see is that Russians are developing and increasing defenses around their air base, not far from Homel, the one that it is used exclusively by Russian troops. It was basically donated to them by Lukashenko. And why does it even speak like that? I think potato has something to do with that. Anyways, so they build plenty of anti-air positions for their S-300 missiles. They have plenty of them. And we can expect that they will be using their this airfield, Zabrovka, as air bridge. But Zabrovka is kind of close to Ukrainian border. It's very close. I think we can reach it with our howitzers even. We got to check that information, basically.
That
interesting.
I do think that's unfortunate. Lost Bohemia has pointed that out, and I do think, unfortunately, if Belarus enters, yes, the Russian army will be downgraded to the third most powerful army in Ukraine. You know, there's you have to make sacrifices. Yeah, admittedly, it's Belarus, but it was worth it for the joke.
They turned over so much of their top line equipment to replenish the Russian stocks that, you know, you wonder, are they now using T-34s on the front line? Because there's not a lot left.
I think they're using pitchforks, but wasn't that an argument you had made earlier, too, that perhaps they really don't want to send troops and they don't want to go in? So one of the reasons they're sending all of their equipment to Russia is to say, hey, we support you, without actually having to go, because now they can sit there and say,
we can't help you, we don't have anything left, we gave it all to you.
Yeah, exactly. Which, I don't know how far that would go, but yeah.
I think that Lukashenko basically prepares some kind of retreat for him, some kind of path for retreating in the future, because after all this ends, he will say, guys, I did everything I could to prevent this war.
Yeah.
Basically, this can work for him. I doubt, though, but it may be like part of his plan.
Yeah. I think he's one of those survivor politicians, and the only thing he cares about is just staying in the seat.
Well, yeah, that may be. Well, Russia may be reduced to extremely aggressive tweeting when the rest of their military is just like they're out of ammo, but they still got tweets. All right. Well, so we've got a super chat level 70, 6.99 Canadian. Thank you very much for your support. And again, a reminder: all super chats 100% are going to the Starsky, and I have already spoken about it. The link of the charity, it's Ukrainian charity, is down in the description. But we do appreciate your support, and we thank you, level 70, for your super chat. Operator Starsky, was there any valuable military information obtained from those recently discovered top-secret Russian documents?
In case there is information crucial for our troops on the operational level, yeah, probably we will not know this soon. But basically, it was their маршрут следования. So it's like the path they had to follow while invading Ukraine. The path for their column, okay, defined route with waypoints and everything like that. Documents regarding this basically invasion and their operations in Ukraine. Operational order, basically.
Yeah.
I did have a question, and I think this could go to each of you, but I'll start with I think you'd each have a different take on it. It was from the discussion we were having earlier on what if there are nuclear weapons in Ukraine, and what if they fall into the hands of the Ukrainian military. So, Starsky, I'll start with you. What happens if the Ukrainian army gets a hold of a nuclear weapon, a Russian nuclear weapon? What then?
Of course, it depends on what kind of weapon we're talking about. In case it's ICBM, which I doubt, because let's not underestimate our enemy so much, even despite they're Russians. Okay.
True.
So yeah, there are weapons that you cannot use basically without access codes and stuff like ICBMs. In case it's some kind of tactical nuclear weapon, like shells, like artillery shells, right? Because they have nuclear shells for their howitzers that detonate at like 15 kilometers away, and they're like weak. They have this weak destructive power, but it's enough to destroy small city. Okay. Those can be used. I think so. I think as soon as this happens, let's imagine it happens again. Let's not underestimate them, even despite they're Russians. I think if we have those, the war is going to stop very, very soon, because probably the only reason Russia attacked Ukraine was because we were so kind to agree to give out our 1,600 nuclear warheads, including tactical nuclear warheads that don't require codes for, activation and so-called nuclear backpacks and plenty other things.
And
That's
to be clear,
why.
those are the weapons. So most people don't realize Ukraine, when it first became essentially its own country, was in fact a nuclear power because it had all of those weapons that were holdovers from the Soviet Union. So, and they were all just in its possession, and they agreed to give those up in exchange for a number of concessions, including a promise from Russia never to invade. Are those the weapons you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. So we had second biggest arsenal in Europe, nuclear arsenal in Europe, after Russia, basically. There was the biggest in the world power, which was Russia, United States, or United States, Russia. Then there was Ukraine, and then there were rest of other countries possessing nuclear weapons. I heard about a lot of deniers talking that you could not use those because you had no access codes. But again, there are plenty of nuclear shells, nuclear tactical backpacks that you could plant in different areas. I lived next door to a colonel who served in special forces back in Soviet times. And when Ukraine became independent country, he was responsible for those tactical backpacks. Colonel Horoshko, he was assassinated in the 90s. And we had plenty of things that we could use today to protect ourselves, because how do you think would Russia invade any country that would have nuclear weapons? For some reason, I don't think so. Georgia, Chechnya, Afghanistan, Syria. Russia's biggest enemy is, of course, NATO and the US.
Yeah.
And Great Britain, of course, because they hate British people for some reason. I don't know. But for some reason, they never fight against NATO, United States, and the UK, because they have nuclear weapons.
Well, okay. So, Commander McMillan, you are advising Zelensky when you find out that the Ukrainian army has gotten a hold of a tactical nuclear weapon, reasonably low yield, that they can deploy in the field. What do you advise?
Mm-hmm. I definitely would say the best use of such an item would be in the propaganda value. Using it costs Ukraine all of the global goodwill they have built up as the underdog being attacked by this, bully. If you are the first to employ a nuke in the field, all of that disappears with the snap of a finger. So don't use it. It's more potent as at best a threat, and I think at worst as a threat, and at best as a propaganda value of saying, look, we now have evidence that they were bringing these in. Obviously, you don't bring something like this into a theater where there's active combat going on, where it potentially can, like it did, get seized unless you're planning to use it. And, it may not be actual use by the Russians, but it's at least an indication that they're seriously considering it. And that burns what little goodwill they have with some of the countries like India and China, who are wavering about whether or not they want to be friendly with the Russians. So I think, I think that the value of a seized nuclear weapon is primarily as a propaganda tool. And you stand, the court of world opinion in front of it and say, look, here's proof. That's to my mind, the best option.
I absolutely agree with you. I would use it. I would use it as a PR measure, definitely to show that Russians were bringing those to the territory of Ukraine, and what was the point of bringing those?
Yeah,
obviously because they were trying to prepare to use those. So. There are much wiser people than me in the office of president, so I think they would know what to do. But again, it's like we're just imagining the situation.
Sure. But I think this speaks to one of the key features of this war that doesn't get acknowledged by a lot of people, and it is that Ukraine has been absolutely brilliant in managing the news sphere of swaying public opinion effectively to its side while bringing the opposition side down into the pit. It's incredibly brilliant the way they've handled it from the very start. And I think that, as much as the heroic actions of the troops in the field, is responsible for Ukraine's survival right now. Because, without all that NATO equipment and such flowing in, this would be a very, very different conflict. And it was
absolutely
that court of public opinion that brought all that stuff to you guys.
Absolutely. And considering the fact that we were opposing the strongest propaganda machine in the world, which is basically Russian propaganda, that has its tentacles anywhere in their show business, in their music videos, in their movies, in their books, literally everywhere, because they have numerous institutions specifically built to study, develop, and implement their informational warfare anywhere in all the spheres of our life. So considering this fact, it's like a miracle.
Yeah.
All right. So we've got a $100 super chat from 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐻𝑒𝐿. Thanks to the hosts for making this happen, and major respect to operator Starsky. Great show with highly valuable, informed perspectives. Thanks, guys. So that's $100 from 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐴𝐻𝑒𝐿. Thank you very much, good sir, and we look forward to donating that to charity, but we appreciate the support, and thank you very much for passing that on, and we do feel blessed both to have Commander McMillan and Operator Starsky on. So thank you, gentlemen, both for giving us your time. I think I couldn't agree more. We're very proud to be having these discussions and getting the word out and letting people understand what's going on. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So a couple more questions. And once again, that was a very, very generous super chat. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. The Iranian drones, the Ukrainians reached out to Iran and asked them to stop supplying those drones to Russia. Was there a response?
Well, Iranians said that, of course, they will investigate everything and make sure that those drones are not provided to Russia. But again, we should understand
drones?
That evil...
What drones?
Yeah, that evil America probably brings those or gives it to Ukrainians, so we bomb ourselves and stuff like that. Because evil West wants to destroy this great friendship between our countries.
All right, and we have another super chat. Oh, yes. Sorry, Commander.
I was just going to say, there's an amusing, convoluted logic to that statement, but yeah.
Drones?
I
No, please.
I swear, I talked to a person who lives in Iran, okay,
Oh,
about their protests. And this person told me that on their TV in Iran, there's a bunch of those TV shows like on Russian TV, for example, where they discuss everything that happens and all those plans of evil America and its minions in Europe and yada yada. So they literally said that all those young people protesting on the streets do that because during this COVID crisis, they were all staying home and studying remotely and stuff. And while staying home, they were all watching American porn. And this made them crazy. And now they're protest. I swear, that's what I heard.
The porn defense. Wow, that's a.
but you see,
that's a first. I've never heard that one.
yeah, but you see, there's a difference, and the difference is the Russians literally have never really had a free press. They've never had the ability to decide for yourself which version of truth is the one that you're willing to accept. The Iranians, for a period, to some extent, did have free press. So they're not as conditioned. So when they see crap like that on their TV, most, at least educated, urbanized Iranians, just kind of shake their head and go, how can anybody be gullible enough to fall for this crap? And I think that's a fundamental difference, is that the poor Russians have basically been, for lack of a better word, slaves forever, and they've become conditioned to that level of thinking. And it's tragic.
Yeah, because in Iran, for example, there are older generations that remember free press. There are older generations that remember that you could go out and buy anything you wanted, for example. And
you didn't have to wear the burqa everywhere, etc.
Absolutely. And in Russia, there are older generations that already had no free press. So yeah, that's a big tragedy, unfortunately. Of course, they have something that kind of looks like free press, like, for example, Russian YouTubers, they're bloggers, but in most cases they are useless because they don't talk. And
they self-censor because they're terrified that, the mysterious knock at the door at 2 a.m. is going to come. So they don't say what they want. It's interesting because I've been following a couple of them who left Russia as this was going on. And literally the moment they're outside Russia, the tone of their blogs completely changes because they're not scared of what's going to potentially happen to them for speaking truth.
Yeah, there was some Russian blogger that it was the fastest subscribe and unsubscribe action in my life because I saw his blog about Ukraine and everything is blue and yellow symbolics and stuff. But I subscribed. I said, "Good job, bro." Then I watched his previous video where don't want to talk about something I cannot name because I still have relatives in Russia, and of course I'm afraid that something can happen to them, like instant unsubscribe.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of them are so useless. At some point, my viewers asked me to make some blog with Russian YouTubers. It has no point.
Well, we did have we had two Iranian journalists who were in the U.S. that we were wanting to speak to about what's happening over there, and so far we've been having difficulty. So we're still trying, but we'll see, because we wanted to do a show on that. But if you happen to know somebody who's over there who we could talk to, I think would be interested. I'll hit you up about that after the show if you'd be willing to talk with me about that. We have another super chat, $50. Jack Ray, God bless Ukraine, Slava Ukraine. Thank you, Jack. Thank you all again for your support. We sincerely appreciate it. Two more things I think that we want to hit. The first, what's going to happen do you think, to the people who have been relocated, essentially kidnapped by Russia, the Ukrainians? It's a tremendous number of people now that are being sent further into Russia. Is there anything that can be done about them? What are there any plans? I assume this has to be on the minds of Ukrainians.
Some of those people have access to the outer world, right? They are not held forcefully in that location, and they theoretically they can find some kind of job, something like that. But the biggest problem is that they don't have funds, and they don't have any opportunity to return to Ukraine. For example, a couple of months ago, I had this information about some underground Russian movement that collects money for Ukrainian
refugees, deportees,
they're kidnapped or relocated people in Russia, right? And they made it possible for plenty of Ukrainian people who were kidnapped by Russians to return home. For example, I have a friend. He had a grandma who lived in Mariupol, and his grandma was relocated to the Russia-controlled territory in Donbass, in Donetsk specifically. From there, she was relocated to Russia. And what she managed to return because some local people were able to give her money, and then she took a ticket. And I'm not sure. I think that she made this trip around the Black Sea and to Ukraine, But she said some crazy things. She said, like, they took her fingerprints. And she's 83. So basically what they were doing...
Enemy of the state.
Yeah. Basically what they were doing, they were taking phones from people. They tried to, scan through phones and find relatives of soldiers of the Ukrainian armed forces and stuff like that. She didn't have such contacts. And she was grandma, but still they took her fingerprints, because who knows, maybe when she's 85 she will be old enough to apply for Ukrainian military intelligence and do some crazy stuff.
Grandma the tank driver.
Yeah, she can pass this specific courses for grandmas.
Hey, Ukrainian grandmothers, man.
Operating frying pans, and it's a very dangerous thing.
All right. Well, so a couple of more things I'm going to want to hit here, but before we do, we have a Discord. Come join us on that Discord. Titan just dropped the link. I'm hoping you can drop it one more time. He's been pretty quick on that, but we are a news and educational show. We cover everything. We've been covering Ukraine. We cover obviously what's going on in the U.S. with the former president and all the shenanigans there. We've been covering the flooding, global warming, any number of other things. We also do loads of interviews. So come check us out. You guys have been so supportive of us. So really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for your support. And like, subscribe, and you know what? If you like the content, just share it. Share this interview or anything else that you find that you like. It's a great way of helping us out. And if you like it, hopefully your friends will like it too, and it helps them out too. So it's a win-win. I do want to discuss. Let's see, any number of things. Let's see, Ramzan Kadyrov. Oh Jesus, Kadyrov. He's the head of the Kadyrov, spasibo. He's currently serving as the head of the Chechen Republic, has come out and lamented a great number of things. He's been complaining about Ukraine, said that the best way to deal with Ukraine was to take everybody and put them into a barn and light it on fire. He has said really a lot of...
A really big barn.
Yeah, that thought crossed my mind too. A little morbid, and he's given his vow that he will wipe Ukraine off the face of the map and yada, yada, yada. A truly unpleasant guy, but he had also lamented all the weapons that the U.S. is giving Ukraine, and I completely agree with him. I really wish the U.S. wasn't giving Ukraine any weapons, and if they would be so kind as to leave, and if Russia would leave, then we don't have to give them any more. It's a win-win for everybody, but so long as Russia is going to be committing genocide, and what Starsky had I think correctly identified as acts of terrorism, if we don't give them weapons, who will? So I'm kind of proud that our country is so high up on the list of Ukrainian supporters. But again, if Russia gets out, I think everybody's problem is solved. Having said that, on the heels of that, there was on Russian national television, let me see if I can... Dear Lord, his name is the narrative. He's been the spearhead for changing the narrative. Apparently, they're not in there for denazification. Now they're there for desanitization, which I have no idea what that.
Satanization.
Oh, satanization. Well, gee, that makes a lot more sense. It helps if you can read. Thank you.
I love the way we're now starting to skew the argument that this is a holy jihad and we need all the Muslims to come and fight for the Russians to put down the Satanist Ukrainians.
Yes.
I mean, how do you come up with this crap?
It's a bit even more weird than that, because basically what they say is that Ukrainians were part of this Russian Orthodox Church, Christian Church. And after Maidan and after our revolution, we rejected the Russian Christian Orthodox Church and became Satanists. And now their Muslim soldiers must fight to protect the rights of Russian Christian Orthodox Church in Ukraine.
Can't we get the Hindus involved too? I mean, this would really
there's gotta be a way to do it.
Set. All you got to do is get Hindus and Jews involved in this fight, and you've got a giant global ultra-religious wackadoodle thing going.
To my Hindu friends, I'm sorry to report, but Ukrainians have been eating cows, and if you truly care about cows, you will, and I'm aware I'm striding Hinduism, but I'm sorry.
And we can probably get to the Orthodox Jews the same way, because I'll bet they're eating pork.
They're eating pork. They're eating pork, folks. And it's been all over the television there. So this to say, there is a midterm election coming up in the U.S., and Republicans have said that one of the first things they will do if they retake any part of Congress will be to look very closely at the funding for our support in Ukraine. And I got to tell you, yeah, I do wish it wasn't necessary, but it is absolutely necessary. And on so many levels, we've had this discussion before. It's just, it's strategically, we can't let Ukraine fall. We really can't. And that's a strategic problem. Morally, ethically, pick away. Ukraine and supporting Ukraine comes out on top. I find this really shocking and disturbing because I grew up in the 80s. And in the 80s, it was the conservatives who were carrying the war banner, and you could never show weakness towards Russia. And they came up with the expression, better dead than red. They'd rather be dead than be Russian. And now
Communist.
Or communist, thank you. Yeah, would have been much more accurate. And now the slogan is what was it actually? And you and I were talking about this. They prefer to be communist than Democrat, or Russian than Democrat. I forget what the.
Yeah. It's along the same lines. Of course, I suspect that fully half of the elected Republicans in Congress are getting paid under the table by the FSB. So,
well, they're getting paid. I mean, Mitch McConnell gets a significant amount of money from aluminum manufacturers who are actually on the. He somehow managed to get sanctions not applied to his home district for aluminum manufacturing by the what's his name? I've forgotten his name. And we're working on a story on that. But the amount of money that Russia has actually put into Congress has been staggering. But all that.
Oh yeah.
All that notwithstanding, so I genuinely, I've been an independent all my life. I've had to be a Democrat, just registered once to vote in a primary. I deeply regret it.
Well, I think part of it is that their propaganda doesn't work here because we see it as the heavy-handed Soviet-era stumbling about posturing. So the next best option for them to get their message across is to get in big with the party that allegedly hated communism and buy all those politicians to act as their agents in Congress.
Starting with the NRA, that was Maria Bustian. I mean, it was. Yeah, you said Putin was probably the greatest spy master in history, and it's only been really through discussing it with you that I've gained an appreciation for just how good he was, and or is. But
I mean, who else can claim to have turned the head of state of a rival nation into your agent?
Yeah, it's So when you do consider how you're going to vote in the primaries, and just considering the tone of the discourse here in the U.S. today, I would like to show a video. And Republicans are saying that Russians aren't that bad. The situation isn't all that bad. This video aired on state television in Russia. Let me just see if I want to make sure.
Corporate sponsor, I saw that.
This was Anton Karsovsky. He's interviewing a writer. It's what they had on public television, but it's difficult and maybe triggering. So with that warning, we're going to play it. It's about 3 minutes long, and this is on state television, which really does mean that it is approved in one way or another by Putin. And he's made sentiments like this clear, as have people below him. This is not unusual, but this was state television 2 days ago.
В общем-то, у меня ощущение, что общественное мнение, оно вошло в такой самоподдерживающийся истерический цикл.
Да, там истерики по любому поводу.
Да, то есть это все уже вышло на совершенно безумный уровень вранья, на совершенно какой-то болезненный уровень фантазий. Там, вспомним всю эту историю про Виагру, которую, оказывается, пачками выдают нашим солдатам,
чтобы насиловать украинских бабок. Господи! Да, бабки гробовые бы еще все потратили на то, чтобы их насиловали русские солдаты. Мне казалось, что всегда ненавидели русских, и Ну, вернее так, те люди, которые идентифицировали себя как а не как русские. И просто какому-то большому количеству русских, какое-то большое количество русских заставили поверить в то, что они
Я в 80-м году первый раз оказался на Украине ребенком еще. И вот там мне украинские дети, они рассказывали про то, что Украина оккупирована москалями, что если бы не москали, они бы жили как во Франции, а вот они страдают, потому что оккупированы. Причем это были не украинские дети, которые украинцы говорят по-украински. Такие там тоже были, они были совершенно нормальные.
А какие, откуда были эти дети?
Это были совершенно русскоязычные, с русскими фамилиями пацаны, которые... У кого-то там отец был военный, у кого-то кто-то еще. Ну, то есть это были абсолютно русские, русскоязычные, но себя
А прям топить таких надо было в Тысыне. Прям вот там, где плыны кача. Вот прям топить этих детей, топить.
Это не
прям
ваш
в
метод.
Тысыне. Это не ваш метод, поэтому вы интеллигентные люди, писатели, фантасты. А это наш метод. Вот прям
Перевоспитывать надо
сказал, что, так сказать, москали оккупировали, и сразу прям бросаешь в реку с бурным течением.
Вообще для этой цели на Руси традиционно использовали розги. Они лучше, чем река, работали,
А я бы,
воспитывали.
там у них есть такая, там каждое, значит, говно называется, у них, так сказать, там такие домики есть куча очень, очень плохих, чудовищных. То есть они же засрали Карпаты, они их уничтожили на самом деле. То есть Карпаты это отвратительно. И там каждая, значит, изба называется Сморякова хата. И вот прям в эту Сморякову хату прямо забивать и сжечь. Прям вот сидите.
Советский Союз, он был тяжело, конечно, болен. И вот Украина, это была, наверное, одна из самых таких пораженных его точек.
А она, наверное, была пораженная точка. Почему? Потому что ее вообще не должно существовать. Украина должна оставаться на карте мира?
Я, честно говоря, думаю, что да, потому что там останется в любом случае большое количество людей, с которыми не хотелось бы жить в одном государстве.
Ну, расстреляем.
All right, that aired on Russian state television 2 days ago. They did, in fact, actually suspend the man, but it was temporary. It looks like he is coming back. He has, quote, learned his lesson. Now, this is the worst we've seen of it. We have similar videos. They've said other things like this, but to reiterate, he was basically suggesting that, first of all, that the Ukrainian grandmothers want to be raped or should want to be raped by Russian soldiers and would pay for it, was advocating for the murder, drowning of children, and shooting and burning of Ukrainians. And the fact is, obviously, if this had happened in the U.S., that man would have to flee the country if he said that. If he said that,
or else he'd be on Fox News, being interviewed on the Tucker Carlson show.
So, Vladimir Putin, the difference between Vladimir Putin and Adolf Hitler that I can tell, having looked at this to reasonably significantly, is that Putin simply has managed to not go so fast and so extreme as to have gotten caught and stopped by the rest of the world. But this is what he thinks of Ukraine. This is what he thinks of the Ukrainian people, and it's that I can tell what he thinks of everybody who isn't what, in his view, is purebred Russian. That's why they are conscripting from areas in Russia that have people who are not, quote, ethnic minorities. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. And essentially ethnic cleansing across Russia. He's just being very smart about it. But for those of you who are considering whether or not to consider support of Ukraine, that's their opposition. And I thought that you should be made aware of that. Any final statements from either of you before we, on that or anything else, before we call it a night? Oh, we do have, actually, let me interrupt. Graf Mikkel, $10. 𝐒𝐤𝐜𝐡𝐨𝐥𝐚𝐬. Oh, dear Lord. You would do that to me, wouldn't you? I don't know who you are, but I'll blame you. Big words like that confuse my brain. Release all the mentally unbalanced from Soviet Lana into Ukraine. Oh, desanitarium ionization. Okay. I get it. It took me a minute.
Sanitariums.
Yes. Okay. It took me a minute. $10 Canadian. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate that. Any final thoughts, either of you? Let's start with Commander McMillan. Any final thoughts?
Nothing really, other than your comment about the difference between Putin and Hitler. I think Putin's probably a better dancer, and Hitler had a better mustache. Other than that, pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I have 3 points about this show. First of all, this 𝐓𝐤𝐬𝐿𝐴, the one who says about raping, drowning, and burning and shooting. So this gentleman is basically Russian opposition here. It's the one who considered to be their liberal democratic Russian.
He's a liberal? He's not like a ultra-nationalist? Wow.
No, he's a liberal. So you can Google 𝐓𝐤𝐿𝐴 Sobchak Maidan. You will find a picture of this man together with Sobchak wearing Ukrainian 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐴 shirts and Ukrainian national traditional costumes. In the times of Revolution of Dignity, they basically came to Kyiv and they supported Maidan. And another thing was that
this your flip-flops.
That another gentleman, that 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐿𝐴, their famous sci-fi writer, he says that Russian-speaking Ukrainians were talking about this, about being occupied by Russians. And I don't think that he asked plenty of Ukrainian-speaking Ukrainians, because Russians don't understand Ukrainian language. But I assume that the people he was talking to were either citizens of some bigger cities, because it was popular to speak Russian in a city, otherwise you would continue living in a village, or he was speaking, which is most probably, to people who lived in Donbass, the same people that they claim to be liberating from this Ukrainian fascism or Nazism of Jewish President Zelensky. Basically, currently they're doing what this other gentleman, this 𝐓𝐤𝐿𝐴, was talking about. They literally burn those citizens of those areas of Donbass, throwing them in the first waves of attacks and doing despicable things. Currently, male population of Donbass is almost non-existent because of this tactic. And another point I wanted to mention was that why did he say all this on air, on live, right? Why did it happen? Probably because at some point, when you're lying all the time, at some point you will crack and you will start speaking truth somewhere, here and there. For example, you can crack like Margarita Simonyan, who said that she was very, very patient, but at some point she said, no, freedom of speech and restriction of censorship in Russia cannot apply. We cannot have that because it's dangerous for our survival. At some point you will crack like Putin, who said that our soldiers will be standing behind women and children, and we will see how those Ukrainians shoot at women and children, and our soldiers will be behind them. And everybody remembers that. At some point, again, you will crack like Putin, who said that he's the biggest nationalist in Russia. It's on YouTube. Yeah. It's easy to find. And of course, you will crack like this man who was very, very patient, and he was calling all that, like liberation from Nazism and special operation, yada yada. But at some point, he literally said what he actually thought, that we have to kill all Ukrainians because we hate them so much. Basically, that's why they started this war. Another reason, of course, because we didn't have nuclear weapons, but that's reason number one why they started this war, because they want to kill us. And situation when we want to leave and someone wants to kill us, there can be like no negotiation, because what will we negotiate? It doesn't work this way.
It's ethnic cleansing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
when this started, they spoke a lot about. We know that the Russian infiltrators that they had sent in were looking for people who did not, for whom Russian was a second language, not a first, and we know that they were trying to get more Russians into the neighborhoods that were not that were more ethnically diverse, and trying to get the ethnic minorities out of them. And there was a lot of talk of that early on, and that sort of got lost as the war has progressed. But I think obviously resources, Crimea, Putin wants to make it as large as possible. But that aside, it's ethnic cleansing, and we're seeing that on both ends from Putin. It's a very a dark and terrible thing, and it's something that if it runs unchecked, eventually nobody, not even the Chancellor himself, is quite Aryan or Russian or whatever it is enough. It's a absolutely horrible thing. We've got his bio. We've got this guy's bio and some of the other footage in the Discord. So come join us on the Discord, and you can find it there. Macmillan, were you going to say something, or did I?
Well, I one of the things that strikes me is that the Ukrainian language seems to be one of the big things that offends the Russians more than just about anything else. I'm curious how much of the Ukrainian population actually use Ukrainian as their primary language in the home.
It was something like 72% a couple of years ago.
That high?
But,
wow.
Yes, but currently, because of everything that happens, plenty of Ukrainians, Russian-speaking Ukrainians, abandon Russian language because they understand that this was a foundation for Russian invasion in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we all understand that speaking Russian in Ukraine and in any other European country is dangerous for this country.
Interesting. Yeah, because I was thinking it might be like it was in Ireland prior to Ireland gaining independence, because less than 20% of the population spoke Irish as a primary language, and probably less than 30% even spoke Irish at all. They were all English speakers, and so it was other aspects that were the determinant. But in Ukraine, it seems to me that it's that linguistic difference. It's one of the primary differentiations of whether you're Ukrainian or Russian, almost more than anything else.
It's not like that. Basically, Ukrainian, it's like Russian-speaking Ukrainian can talk to Ukrainian-speaking Ukrainian, and they will perfectly understand each other. It's like completely not a problem. And there are very, very rare cases when Ukrainians would be like, aggressive towards Russian language, because nobody gives a damn, actually. In Ukraine, you can speak Chinese if you want. But the problem with Russia is that they had this huge Russian expansion in terms of culture in Ukraine. So much so we had again 2/3 of Ukrainians speaking Ukrainian language, but 90% of Russian books, Russian music, Russian movies, Russian TV shows and stuff. After the Revolution of Dignity, because we realized that we are risking of losing this this
The cultural heritage of your
yes,
language.
losing our national identity.
Right.
Because we know that there were almost 100 documented cases of repression against Ukrainian language, starting from, I think, 15th century, by different Russian tsars and their church, and in communist times, of course. So we gave chance to our Ukrainian musicians, Ukrainian writers, Ukrainian artists, and all kinds of people to be able to become successful, to present their art to Ukrainian society. And they were successful because this is something that Ukrainians always wanted. Again, Ukrainians are very, very much into singing. You probably saw Eurovision plenty of times. We are tired of winning these contests. But yeah, you gotta give chance to other talented people as well. But we have a lot of heritage, a lot of cultural heritage that we want to share with others. And because some people, some oligarchs who owned this media holdings and publishing agencies and stuff, they would only post stuff in Russian, because in Ukraine, if you wanted to become oligarch, you would have to have a lot of friends in Russia.
Yeah.
Like Medvedchuk, for example, right? So because of that, it was kind of hard until our new democratically elected government decided that we should give chance to Ukrainian creators. And basically, at this point, Ukrainian culture is everywhere. Most of Russian books and publishers and yada yada, they are all supported by Russian government and Russian extremist organization. It's a different topic that I can talk for hours about. But as soon as this happened, Russians there, I mean, like ethnic Russians in Russia behind the border, they started screaming that this nationalist regime literally eats children on streets if they speak Russian.
No, we had a hiccup there.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
So kind of that's the story. Currently in Ukraine, everybody like between 8 years old and 88 years old understands that Russians used this language kind of
problem,
right?
Yeah, as a pretext.
As a pretext to justify their invasion in Ukraine, because if there are people speaking Russian in Ukraine, we have to protect and liberate them. That's why speaking Russian basically is very dangerous is in other countries, unlike any other language. Because only if you speak Russian in any other country in Europe, there's a risk that Putin would decide to liberate you, even if you don't want that. So it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
All right, we have one other super chat now. It's €200 from of course from Big Gay Sexy Balls, €200. Thank you, sir. Well, I suspect he's friends with our head mod, Titan Uranus. Every time I say his name, people laugh. I mean, he's our head mod. I think I just figured out what that means. All this time, I've never known. Okay. Yeah, so...
Don't go there. Just go there.
Too late. Big Gay Sexy Balls, 200 euro. Thank you very much for your support. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for livening the mood. I think that's a great note to end on. You made Starsky laugh. I've been telling jokes, and they have been awesome. And he's barely cracked a smile. But you give us 200 euros, and that will be going in its entirety to charity for Ukraine. So thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate that. So Starsky, any other streams you got coming up?
Yes, there will be another stream tomorrow with the Shields, another update on Ukraine. We will be discussing recent events, trash talking, as we usually do, and life and a lot. So tomorrow, the Shields, 10 p.m. Kyiv time, something like that.
3:30 Eastern Standard. We've got the link in the description here, the link for the show tomorrow. I will be stopping by, the troublemaker I am, to give. It's like when I see Starsky, I was just like, ooh, a chance to give him a hard time. So I'll be stopping by if I can tomorrow.
As if giving him a hard time today wasn't enough.
No, absolutely. Listen, I'm gonna be like beaming for he was on, and I was just busting his balls about it. So all right, and I wasn't sure if you would thank you very much for clarifying your 3 points on that clip that we shared. Again, that clip and everything else is on our Discord, along with the bio of the guy and a few other things. And we have a whole catalog of everything since this has started. Any final thoughts before we go, Starsky?
Thank you so much for inviting me, Nick, Commander. It was a pleasure, and always a pleasure to answer as much questions as I can. Sometimes because I cannot talk about some things from my level, because I'm a press officer. I'm not a commander. I'm not even a tactical commander. I was, however. So yeah, sometimes I cannot answer your questions properly or at full, right? But I'm doing my best. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. I think it's important that everybody have a face to this, and so we appreciate it. All right. So we'll be having you back next week, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday. We'll be having Macmillan back for, depending on what's going on, whether that's going to be a downtime, our little fireside chat on Thursdays at 9:30 p.m. Or what. And we've got a couple other things that we're sorting out for what we're going to do for next week. Like I said, we're trying to get journalists, Iranian journalists who are in the U.S. It's been a challenge, but we'll have that. We're discussing that and everything else. And we are a community-run show. People contribute to our show by on the Discord and help us set up the news and figure out what we're going to be talking about. So come along, watch, participate. All people are welcome. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you. Barring anything crazy, any breaking news that we have to go live for, we will see you all next week. Have a good rest of your weekend. Right on.